Hello and welcome to Beyond the Launch. I am your host, Attorney LaKanya Murray with Off the Mark IP Solutions, where we help clients throughout the United States with trademarks, copyright, and business development solutions. Thank you so much for joining me this Thursday for another episode of Ask Me Thursday. We got a really great question today. During our last Ask Me Thursday, someone posed the question, can a word mark conflict with the logo mark? And I think that is an amazing question. And as it is with the law, the answer is not always a straight yes or no. I know it's, kind of confusing, but it's not always a straight yes or no. Thank you so much. When you come in, say hey so that I know that you're here. So, even when you're analyzing and trying to determine whether a word mark can be conflict with the logo mark, you still have the same analysis. You're still looking to see if the two are similarly confusing. And when we talk about similarly confusing, what we want to know is that mark likely to cause confusion when used with the good or service that's identified in its application with a mark that's already registered. Okay, so is your mark as identified in the application with the good or service likely to cause confusion with an already registered mark? That's what they are looking for. So that's what similarly confusing means, and it applies whether or not you're comparing word marks to word marks or word marks to logo marks. And when we talk about logo marks, I'm assuming that you're saying that this logo mark is like an image, but it also has the word mark included. So you want to know if you're okay. So this is what the USPTO looks for. They look at how similar or dissimilar the marks are in a couple of different categories. So first they look at the appearance. Do they look the same? Now oftentimes if you have a logo mark, they're not going to exactly look the same because the logo mark is going to have a little extra flair and images with it. But if that word mark is predominant in that logo mark, then I guess they could look alike. They also want to know, does it sound alike? So what does it sound like? Even though you're looking at an image on one and a word on another, if it has that word mark included in the logo, then you're also going to take that into consideration. What does it sound like? Do they sound the same? The third thing they want, do they mean the same? So this is not necessarily for word versus logo, but it can be. The main thing with this is whether or not, so some people say, well, I saw there was a mark registered, but theirs is Kings with a Z and mine's Kings with an S. We're good. Can I register it? No, because one, they look the same. Two, they sound the same. And three, they mean the same. And also, and that doesn't mean just in that category either. So maybe you're using a foreign translation of a word. Maybe someone has a mark that's registered and it means beautiful, right? And you're using a foreign translation of that word, and when it's translated, it also means beautiful. That's what you have to take into consideration also. What's the meaning? And maybe it's not even the foreign meaning. Maybe, in the U.S. we have several different words that mean the same. So you have to take that into consideration because they do. And then the final thing that they look at as far as appearances is the commercial impression. And by commercial impression, they want to know, what does it look like to consumers? What do we think about that mark? Do we think the marks look similar? So that's what they look at when they're trying to determine whether or not something is similarly confusing or not. And that's whether you're dealing with word marks or logos. The analysis does not change. Now, in addition to those four things, the appearance, the sound, the meaning, and the commercial impression, they also look at the trade channels, because maybe sometimes you can have all four of those things, but the trade channels are different. And by trade channels, we mean like the path from vendor to consumers. Like, where are the consumers buying from? Where they're buying your product? An example that I think of off the top of my head is Bentley. The car Bentley. And I didn't know this. They sell a perfume and some cosmetics. They got a trademark for it, and the trademark was opposed by Bentley University and Bentley Organics because they also had products in that same field. Well, Bentley argued that because their trade channel was so niche and tight that there would be no likelihood of confusion, because the only place you can buy this perfume at was at their vehicle dealership. Like, it wasn't available in regular trade channels, in regular markets. You had to come to that dealership to buy their product, so there would be no likelihood that it'd be confused with the other two brands. Other thing that they look at is the conditions. A good one. What conditions are the consumers buying in? Are they impulse buyers, just making a decision real quick, and so they don't have time to really make a real decision and determine whether or not these brands are different? Are there someone that's going to be more sophisticated? Some buyers that are going to be a little more careful. They look at that as well. And in addition to that, they also look at the number and nature of similar marks that are already registered. Like, how many Divine creations are already out there, or Divine something or another are already out there in your related field. That's something that we look at too when we do our trademark clearance search. If I do a trademark clearance search and I come back with multiple marks in the related field that have similar names, I have a conversation with my client. Look, we might be able to get this, but at the end of the day, you're registering your trademark so you can make your unique presence in your market. And if you already see that your market is saturated with these similar names, you might want to reconsider. Or somebody will come to me and they say, well, I see that a lot of people are using this, but I want to be the first one to register so that it'll be mine. Why would you want to do that? Because one is, you already know you're not the only person in the market with this name. And I always tell people, like, are there any other Apples out there? Any other names that are similar to Apple doing computers? Any Microsofts or Dairy Queens? No, those brands are unique and they stand on their own. And that was very intentional. And I always advise my clients to do the same. Hey, thank you so much for joining me. The final thing that they look at when they're trying to decide whether or not something is similarly confusing is whether or not there's a valid consent agreement. Because sometimes, you say, you know what, I do have the same mark. Maybe one person deals with elderly people, one person deals with young people. So you go to them and say, hey, do you mind if I register this mark in this field? We have the same, we're in the same and related field. And if they agree to it, you can file that consent agreement, and then you'll be able to move on with your trademark registration. All right, so that's the answer to the question. So the short answer to the question is, it's not a straight yes or no. But then you have to do this analysis where they look at different things and determine whether or not the marks are similarly confusing. And you have to do that with any type of mark, whether it's a word mark or a logo mark. All right? Question. If you have a question for Ask Me Thursday, make sure that you either DM me on the Off the Mark IP Solutions Facebook page or on our Instagram page, or you can shoot us an email at hello@offthemarkipsolutions.com. And who knows, you might have your question answered next. And just as a reminder, so if these trademarks, they keep you confused, you're still confused, what I want you to do is take advantage of our $47 sale that we have going on right now for our Ultimate Trademark Basics Blueprint course. It's only $47, and it goes through the trademarks, what you can do, what you can't do, how you can tell if your mark is available. We talk about the application process. It's a really good course for only $47, and you have lifetime access to it. So thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you next Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time.